Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're jumping into a really fascinating essay. It's by Jaime Hoerricks called Everything Was to Something, The Shape of Safety.
Right. And it's pretty powerful stuff. It blends personal stories with research, including work by Stephen Kapp.
Yeah, and it gets into something really fundamental, the connection between, our sensory experiences, our nervous systems, and the spaces we're in. Classrooms are a big focus, but it definitely applies more broadly.
Totally. And the core question it throws out there is, well, what if we flipped the script on design?
Flip the script how?
Instead of designing based on norms or what we think should work, what if we started with what our nervous systems actually need?
That's a big shift. And the essay really grounds this idea right away, doesn't it, with that opening image?
Yeah, the author's sitting in this room, packing up.
Noticing the little things, the broken blinds, the light, that trolley that keeps pulling left.
Exactly. It captures that feeling, that reluctance to leave a place that maybe despite its flaws actually felt safe on a physical level.
It sets the stage perfectly. This space worked for them.
Right. So that's what we're diving into, unpacking these insights about how our bodies sense and remember and what that means for creating spaces where people can, truly feel safe and like they belong.
Okay, so let's start with that personal history, the sensory memory idea. The essay calls it an archive.
Yeah, and that childhood quilt example is just so vivid.
7 wool blankets inside old trousers. Heavy, textured.
It was basically a weighted blanket before that was really a thing, right? A source of safety, of physical grounding in a shared space that maybe didn't always feel secure.
It shows how early these sensory anchors form. And then there's the contrast later.
Ah, yeah, when the room gets spray painted.
And the author describes their body knowing something was wrong, the order collapsed, the rhythm break, even before their brain caught up.
That really hits home, that idea of the body keeping score, reacting physically before conscious thought.
And it links directly to the school experiences described.
Oh, absolutely. The essay paints this picture of school as just sensory chaos for some kids.
Cluttered walls, flickering lights, itchy carpets, unpredictable noises.
Yeah, all of it. And leading to that feeling of being different, needing to mask and thinking, it must be my fault.
Assume the fault was mine. That line really stays with you.
It does. And this is where the essay brings in that research angle, mentioning Stephen Kapp's work.
Right, the idea that maybe autism starts with sensory movement differences, not primarily social issues. How does that change things in the essay's view?
Well, it reframes everything. Suddenly, all that bracing, the flinching, needing quiet, it's not defiance or being difficult.
It's data.
Exactly. It's the nervous system communicating its needs. It's saying, this is too much or this feels unsafe.
So not resistance, but a physical response to the environment.
Precisely. And that leads to the essay asking this just incredibly pointed question.
Which is this?
What if someone had actually read that record? What if they saw it as data, not defiance, as sensory need, not resistance?
What if they just asked what the person needed less of?
Yeah. It just stops you cold, right? Makes you think about how often we might misinterpret those signals.
Definitely. And it flows right into the critique of the ideal classroom.
Yes, the print-rich, student-centered model.
Which the essay describes in pretty sensory terms.
Oh, yeah. Colors that shout, peeling charts, clashing fonts, desks jammed together, lights too white, air too fast, noise bouncing everywhere.
It sounds exhausting just hearing it described.
Totally. And the author describes their adult reaction, not a meltdown, but a boundary rupture. The nervous system just shutting down because its warnings are ignored by the space itself.
And the irony is, these are often the rooms held up as best practice, right? They tick the boxes.
Exactly. They look engaging, they follow the guidelines, but the essay pushes back hard. Best practice for whom?
Because the underlying assumption seems to be that more stimulation is always better, that busy equals learning, and quiet means neglect.
Right. It ignores that for a lot of people, especially neurodivergent folks, that level of input is just dysregulating. It's the opposite of helpful. The essay points out kids naturally seeking quiet corners.
So what's the alternative presented, the classroom the author actually built?
Yeah, and it's described so differently, not flashy or decorated in the usual sense.
More muted, soft, uncluttered.
Exactly. Deliberate choices, focusing on things like tactile continuity, a sense of rhythm. Creating a shape that holds space is how it's put.
And the effect on the students.
It's really telling. Kids coming in early just for the quiet, staying at lunch, saying things like, your room feels good.
Not exciting. Not stimulating, but good. That feels significant.
It is, and the author felt it too. Breathing easier, less bracing, feeling like they belong there.
So it's not minimalism for its own sake.
No, the essay calls it design for regulation, shaped by need, not just rules or trends, for nervous systems that have been bracing for way too long.
So practical things like routines over chaos, softer light, furniture that doesn't screech, walls that aren't visually overwhelming.
Yeah, things that allow for what the essay terms a nervous system exhale.
That's a great phrase.
Isn't it? And what might look understimulating to someone else is actually experienced as safety, as dignity.
That completely reframes what makes a space good or effective.
Yep.
Which brings us back to the start, the difficulty of leaving that safe space.
Right, the packing scene again. The grief described isn't huge or dramatic.
Just a quiet ache of displacement.
And the reason it's hard connects back to that sensory memory idea.
Because spaces hold memories in a physical way. The light, the feel of a corner.
Exactly. And muscle memory is tied to space, too. It's felt. Your body learns a space.
And here's that crucial point the essay makes. For some, safety isn't the default.
No, it's a build, something you have to construct consciously, piece by piece. And that takes energy.
So moving means you have to rebuild it all over again, expend all that energy.
Right. And think about that detail with the fidgets.
Oh yeah, slipped into a separate bag, worn smooth.
They're not just supplies, they're anchors. The essay says they're the first thing going into the new room, not to fix it, but because they remember. They carry that history.
It shows how personal and, well, physical building safety can be.
Definitely. And needing those specific tools or conditions connects to the essay's points about diagnosis.
Ah, right. That diagnosis isn't just about getting services.
No, it's about language.
Yep.
It gives you the words, the framework to explain why certain sensory things are painful.
Why the lights hurt or the noise feels like it's stealing your breath.
Yeah. And language to advocate for what you need, explaining that, say, a tidy corner or a predictable routine isn't just a preference, it's a lifeline.
And the critique here is pretty sharp, isn't it? About restricting diagnosis.
Very. The essay argues that saying someone isn't autistic enough or gatekeeping diagnosis effectively takes away that language.
Takes away the ability to say, this space is hurting me.
Exactly. It invalidates the person's sensory reality. It invalidates the blueprint they need to build a space that works.
In the essay's words, it's like saying, your pain isn't real. Your boundaries don't matter. Your room doesn't deserve to exist.
Which is just incredibly damaging, whether it's meant that way or not.
So tying all this together, the sensory archive, the critique of normal spaces, the design for regulation, what's the big takeaway here? What's the shift in thinking?
I think it's about moving away from designing based on how things look or ticking boxes or assuming one size fits all.
And moving towards
Designing spaces that actually listen to our nervous systems, starting from the inside out, you know, based on that felt sense of safety and regulation.
Which loops back perfectly to that really challenging question the essay poses.
Right. What would classrooms look like if autistic people were the baseline for design?
Wow. If we centered the needs of those whose sensory systems are often the most sensitive, the most easily overwhelmed.
How might that change all our shared spaces, not just schools, but offices, public areas, everything?
It makes you see design less as decoration or even just pure function.
And more as a relationship between us, our bodies, our nervous systems, and the world around us. Does this space make you brace? Or does it let you breathe?
That's the core of it.
And it's something you can think about in your own life, right? Where do you feel that exhale? What does your body tell you about the different spaces you inhabit?
And maybe what could change if we started intentionally building more spaces that allow for that safety, that dignity, that nervous system exhale?